This is Steve Quarles and Yana Valachovic. This video, we're going to be talking about your windows. So this is a slide from a research project I was involved with a number of years ago. It's a good view of the two ways in which windows can be vulnerable during a wildland fire. One is that the window is exposed to either radiant heat or flames, and the glass breaks, and the other is that in a similar kind of an exposure, radiant heat and or flames, and the framing material ignites and the fire burns through the framing material and into into your house. So either one of them is a bad scenario, but those are sort of address the two kinds of components that windows have. And a lot of research has shown that the glass is far and away the most vulnerable part of the window. And so glass is where we need to focus. And this is how glass is vulnerable, this little slide. So if you think of your window, you either have a dual pane or a multi-pane window, or you have a single pane window. What we see here is as a dual pane or two panes, and that's indicated by the two long rectangular bars here, where you have in window talk, each surface of glass has its own number. So one pane of glass has number 1 and number 2, and the other pane of glass has number 3 and number 4 surfaces. So that's what that number 1 through 4 is all about. And then if we can imagine whatever framing material you're using, that's the green part. So windows are vulnerable, or glass is vulnerable, because of the protection to part of the glass offered by that frame compared to the part of the glass that is completely exposed to either the flames or the radiant heat. In this picture, we're looking at radiant heat, but part of the glass gets hot, and the part of the glass protected by the frame doesn't get as hot. And so you have a temperature difference between the exposed glass and the protected glass. And it's these temperature differences that results in stresses that cause small cracks or fractures at the edge of the glass to expand and move into the window that's not protected by the frame. If you have enough of these cracks occurring, then the glass breaks and you can have glass falling out. And so what we want to do is enhance the protection, or enhance the protection of the window by making sure we have the best glass that we can. So there's basically two kinds of glass that as a homeowner we can have access to. One is called annealed glass, that's sort of regular glass, and the other is called tempered glass. So it's easy to find tempered glass is often on your car, and it's been part of your home for a long time, because if you have a bathroom, typically that glass is tempered. If you have a sliding glass door, that glass is tempered. If you remember the movie Ghost, that 1980s movie with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze, at the end of the movie, the bad guy gets shoved against a window in an apartment in New York City, and a big shard of glass breaks apart and impales him. So that's annealed glass. Tempered glass would not do that. It would break into little teeny pieces and fall to the ground, or break into little teeny pieces and stay sort of in the frame. So and we like the tempered glass because of the way it breaks, and because it's so much stronger than regular annealed glass that breaks into these shards. So the shard part, more dangerous, the tempered part, stronger, and the way that it breaks, it doesn't break into little shardy things, it breaks into little bits that aren't going to cut you. The tempered glass, from mechanically, it's 3 or 4 times as strong as annealed glass. And from a heat perspective, it's also 3 or 4 times as strong, more resistant to heat. So that's why we like tempered glass in windows. And this picture is just sort of to show you a couple of different ways, again, that windows can be threatened, radiant heat and flame contact. We've seen these pictures before, but now that we're talking about windows and glass, we're going to see them again. The upper left-hand picture, remember that Eastern Tennessee fire where cabins were burning. There was a window in the very top of this cabin, kind of a triangular shaped window. Glass in that window broke as a result of radiant heat from this cabin, and then allowed fire to get into the home, the cabin this way. And this is the lower right-hand picture is that test at the IBHS Research Center in South Carolina, where embers ignited debris, bark mulch on the ground, and then flames traveled laterally and impinged on the window. So we have radiant heat in the upper left example, and then flame contact in the lower right. Both of them can result in an exposure to the glass that causes it to break. If we have tempered glass instead of anneal glass, then that's just that much more resistant to breakage. And when you have multiple panes, so 2 panes or 3 panes in multi-pane kind of windows, then this inside pane is protected until this outside pane breaks. So you have sort of two layers of protection. You may have a damaged window because the outer pane breaks, but the inside pane hasn't broken yet. So part of the what Yana and I have been talking about in terms of creating and maintaining defensible space is so you don't have such a long radiant heat or flame contact exposure to the window. So whereas you might crack or break one pane, that inside pane is still providing protection to the inside of your house. So we talked about the fact that you can be sort of indifferent to frame type. One exception to that general rule is regarding vinyl windows, and they are pretty sensitive to heat. And so whereas, except for one exception that we'll talk about in a second, they're not going to break because glass is still the most important part in terms of being vulnerable to flames and radiant heat. The frame material can be damaged in terms of melting or deforming. And so I think in these situations, after your home is threatened by wildfire, you might be replacing windows, but not the house. And I think that's sort of this distinction between damaged and failure in this case. So this is this example of where some vinyl windows can be more vulnerable and where frame types will matter. And as you can see on the left-hand picture, there's 2 parts to this hung window. The hung window is where that has that separator member in the middle, and you can either be able to lift the lower pane, the lower sash up, and sometimes bring the upper one down. So in a single hung window, you can only bring the lower one up. In a double hung window, you can bring the lower one up or the upper one down, or both. But if you look at the right-hand picture here, you notice there's some metal pieces inside of this vinyl framing material. If this middle part that you see on the left does not have the reinforcement, then that middle part can deform at exposures far less than that required to break the glass, and the window will, the member will deform, as we see in this lower picture, and the glass can fall out before it breaks. It'll break when it hits the ground. So if you're buying a vinyl window, you need to make sure that it has this reinforcement members in this, what they call meeting rail, or where the part of the window where the 2 parts, the upper part and the lower part, come together in the middle. It's called a meeting rail, but just know that it has to have this reinforcement in order for this rule about being indifferent to frame type really holds. This is the one exception where it won't hold if it's not reinforced in this way. So here's just a picture from, again, that we've seen when we talked about vents and when we talk about roofing. This window the one encircled in yellow, looks like it's a single pane window, and likely it has the annealed glass in it. So this would be vulnerable to breakage because there's only one pane present, and it's the weaker kind of glass from a heat exposure perspective. And there's many things that we saw here on this home at the base of the wall that could result in flames touching that window and touching that glass. And that would be the vegetation at the bottom, and potentially mulch in amongst that vegetation near the home, and then also the debris bins that we see there. So in this situation, getting rid of the debris bins, making this non-combustible zone would help this window. Dual pane windows is one area where energy efficiency and fire resistance really come together. Dual pane windows makes your home much more energy efficient, and also provides far more protection from a wildland fire perspective, particularly if you have the tempered glass part. If you're building a new home, California Building Code says that you will have dual pane windows, and one of those panes will be tempered glass. And so you're sort of forced to have tempered glass everywhere in your home. In recent years, in the past, tempered glass has been required when glass is in a door, when glass is in a sliding glass door, when a window is really close to the ground, say within 18 inches from the ground, then those windows had to have tempered glass, but the other ones did not. What Chapter 7A does is make every other window have tempered glass now, if it's a new home. And Chapter 7A has been in effect since about 2008. So if you have a home built after that, you should have tempered glass windows.
I think when it comes to windows, they have unique vulnerabilities, and most of us aren't in a position that we're building a new home or we're going to retrofit and upgrade our windows. So I think we just need to pay attention to the fact that most windows can't take a lot of heat. And so how you manage heat is really in our defensible space strategies, meaning that you're going to, remove what is fuel around windows so that they don't take a lot of heat, and then they don't break and crack and create a way for a flame or embers to penetrate the house. So, giving some extra attention to where your windows are and what you have in front of them is really critical. If you have a big plate glass window that overlooks a steep canyon, for example, and has that amazing, awesome view, well, it'd be a really good idea to not have some planters underneath it, not have a bunch of extra grass or other materials in front of it, because if you get, fire running up with a lot of heat on it, it has the capacity to ignite what's in front of the window. That window's going to fail, and that'll be the way that your home will likely burn. So thinking about the windows, thinking about your vista, and then pushing the vegetation back and other fuels back so that your windows have that little extra bit of protection is what I like to think about when it comes to windows. The other issue is depending how close your outbuildings, your garage, or your neighbor's house is, when it comes to windows, one of the additional challenges is that you can have a high radiant heat exposure if one of those outbuildings, your neighbor's house, your fence, is near to that window, and you have ignition of that other structure. Yeah. And in that case, it's really recommended that you upgrade that window in particular to the tempered glass environment. And you might additionally want to consider some kind of deployable metal shutters so that when and if you're in a position to evacuate, you can close those deployable metal shutters and then really harden that whole side of the house to the exposure that might be ignited through, ignition of the house, the neighbor's house, the garage, the fence, and those things. So there's a little bit of extra attention that needs to be given when you can't move what might be fuel away from windows.